So we're over at Dick's brother Skip's place
Hands,
here,
yep.
and he's the maple syrup guy here. So he's got it going today. So I thought we'd come over here and see what he's got going. So you've been doing this for how many years now?
I think this is our 5th year, and we started some good friends of mine retired up to Eagle River about 20 years ago, and they self-taught themselves how to make syrup. And they told us every year we would want to go up there, but syrup is totally dependent on weather, the sap flow.
Right.
So we never got up there. And then about 5 years ago, in December around Christmas, the guy told me that he can't do it any longer because his back, and he was having to go up and down hills.
Right.
So Dave and I and Sharon, we drove up there, picked up all of his equipment, and we brought it down here, and then we started with two barrel stoves, which is just essentially the 55-gallon drums.
Right.
Cut a hole in them, cut a vent stack, and put the pans on.
Then how much sap were you boiling, and what were you yielding?
The barrel stoves would burn about 3 gallons an hour. These are called evaporators. This small evaporator burns off 7 to 10 gallons an hour. And the bigger evaporator, which this is the first time we're using it, that burns off 10 to 15 gallons per hour.
Nice.
We typically don't do a boil unless we have about 50 gallons in the tank.
Okay.
Around here, the sap content is about 2% sugar.
Right.
So 50 gallons will get us about 1 gallon of finished syrup.
Right. Right. You know how to make $1 million making syrup, don't you?
Well,
You start with $1 million. Start with $2 million. You spend $1 million on equipment, and you end up with $1 million.
That's right. This is a money pit equipment.
Yeah, I know.
You don't do this to make money.
Yeah, you do it just because it's something to do. And
Yeah, it's a great hobby for the end of winter,
Right.
beginning of spring, when typically you wouldn't really be out so much. But
Right.
we'll be out here. The amount of sap we have today will probably burn off in hopefully 4 to 5 hours. And then I finish my syrup off to syrup consistency the following day.
oh, nice. Okay. So now this is your older one, the new one. So tell me the difference between the two.
Well, again, this just has a smaller pan. This is 20 inches by 36. The new pan is 20 inches by 48. They're divided pans, and once this pan is sweetened, theoretically, you'll put in raw sap up through this sap tank. It'll flow through, and by the time it gets to the front end here, that will be almost finished syrup.
Right. Nice. So this is made pretty close by.
This
right?
is made in Hilbert, Wisconsin, near Green Bay.
Yep.
It's American made, and that was one of the reasons I bought it. A lot of maple syrup equipment is Canadian made because
Right.
Canada produces about 2/3 of all the maple syrup in the world.
The world, yeah. Pretty much. And it's Ontario, isn't it?
Quebec
Quebec too.
and Ontario, and they actually have a government-run kind of monopoly, so that all these commercial producers have to sell it to the monopoly, and then they control the market.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So it's their fault.
Yeah, it's their fault. Right.
Nice. So this unit you got over here, what did this one cost you?
Oh, I think this is about 1,500, somewhere in that range, maybe
So
1,800.
for all the sap you've made out of that, the sap basically cost you.
It costs about $300 a gallon.
Nice.
And this, it was about $2,500, but that include the pan, that include the boiling
So
pan,
the price of the syrup's gone up.
the drip pan. Yes, sir. Again, this is the greatest money pit hobby next to my other money pit hobby, which is beekeeping.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So again, if you want to spend a lot of money to earn nothing, these are great hobbies. But I tell you, if you give away maple syrup or honey, people appreciate it.
Yeah.
So that's why we do
It
it.
could be worse. You could be a race car driver locally and just spend money on engines and tires and trailers and.
Or it could
Yeah,
be a wood cutter and a wood supplier where
Yeah, we're just. I think we're one step above you. Just one step. And
one
that's
step
it.
for the
Just
money
one
pit
step.
hobby,
It's
right?
a money pit too.
Yeah.
So every time you think you're making money, you spend it on more equipment.
Yeah. That's guy stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So we just like to keep this fire fed here.
Yeah, you want to keep it hot, don't you?
Yep.
Do you find smaller stuff's better as you split it down smaller?
Well, this stove, the maximum it can take is a 12-inch log piece of wood.
But you want smaller splits too, so you get more flame from it.
Right. So we typically split it, and then this new evaporator will take up to 21 inches.
Oh, really? So
But we try not to make it 21, so most of these are 16 or so.
Now, is the draft supposed to be just the door open?
Well, when we first started, because we want once we get our bed of coals, then we'll shut this. This is a damper down here. Oops, I'm not gonna work it because I don't have the gloves. But so we'll close that, and the damper will keep it.
So now the gauge over here, what does this read here? Because
Well,
it doesn't read anything until it gets to
This is what we call bricks, and syrup should be at about 0.60 bricks. And when it's finished, you can see there's a 7 there. It'll be just right at about that. There's two ways you could determine whether it's final syrup consistency. One is using bricks, and then I also have a hydrometer that I will work that just to make sure that the hydrometer and this match. Also, what we do is water where we are right here boils at 210 degrees, just because of our elevation.
Right.
So if I don't want to mess with the bricks, if I don't want to use the other hydrometer, I will just, when I'm finishing off the syrup, once it hits 217.5 degrees, which is 7.5 degrees above the boiling point of water here, I'll finish it.
Now you say here because water boils differently at different altitudes.
Right. If you're at 5,000 feet, it would probably. Well, it's just different, whatever your elevation is.
Nice. Now the trees you're tapping are soft maple.
These are red maples.
Red maple,
There's a couple of reds, and then we have a couple of silver maples. Further up north, there's the sugar maple.
Right.
Typically, the sugar maples will have 2.5 to maybe up as much as 4% sugar content.
Yep.
And the sugar content will vary year to year, just depending upon conditions and the weather and how much rain, how much moisture is in the soil.
Well, the most important part of this whole process is the work crew, which is right
Yeah,
here.
yes, it is.
Because you have 4 bosses, I can see.
4 bosses and my real
This is the
supervisor.
real supervisor.
Right there, my wife Sharon.
She gives the orders to these guys, and then they give you the orders. Yeah. So
That's right.
the way to do it.
That's right.
That's the way to do it. The only thing they're missing is a can of beer.
It's over there. It's in the snow.
It's in the snow. Got it. What do you got here? What am I looking at?
That is a point Bach.
But this is the fuel.
This is the fuel that keeps the workers going. Yes, it is a wonderful fuel.
It's a wonderful fuel.
If we could get this in this, it would be great. If
Well, we
get
just dump some in there.
Yeah.
Beer flavored
Yeah.
syrup. That might be a good thing.
Yeah.
You could patent that maybe.
There we go. Tell your buddies up in
Oxbow?
Oxbow. Yeah, they might
They'd
like
be all
that.
for that. Too.
Yeah.
Except I don't think they drink Point. I think they're blue bullet specials. I think they're either
Blue bullet.
be
Bush Light. Bush Light.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think
That's a great way to get drunk on not much money.
for sure.
We have these drip pans here. We put the cold sap into here, and this will heat up a little bit. So when it drips into the pan, you try to never lose your boil. So by putting warmer sap in here, it helps assure that the boil isn't depleted.
So you're basically steam heating this pan is what
Right,
you're doing.
that's correct.
You're maximizing your wood usage and your heat. Yeah, makes sense. So, and every part you have here, they give away pretty much, right? It's all free.
That's right.
All stainless steel.
Well,
So
yeah, the boiling pans are stainless steel. This is cast iron here. You can't see it, but inside there's fire brick and fire insulation.
Yep.
Again, to try to control the heat, and having that insulation ultimately, the longevity, the lifetime of these things is enhanced because you're not. You're deflecting and you're deflecting heat away from the cast iron.
right.
into the up into the boiling pans.
You got these on these carts so you can wheel them in back into the garage and,
Right.
when you're done?
They stay in my garage. That's the storage place for them. Because they're a little heavy to lug around.
Right, and it's more important to protect these than the car anyway. More valuable than the car.
Priorities.
Right, you got to have your priorities. I agree with
Never
that.
gonna get right. Yeah. Money in the bottle.
You got about 50 cents right there. If that, right? A quarter maybe.
See, it cost $100 to get.
And then, of course, we've got our $15,000 electric.
Oh yeah, you
UPVs.
got to have that so you can go get your sap. Yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, after a day's running of sap, we have to charge the batteries. So that's a 4 or 5 hour process. So we're enriching the electric co-op.
Yeah, but you'd be loved in California.
What's
Electric.
what's your collection system? You're using gallon jugs, right?
We use gallon jugs from distilled water, and we just cut little holes in them. We hang them on the spiles in the trees, and it'll hold just a little under a gallon before it start to overflow. So we've got about.
There's a bottle right back there.
We've got about 55 trees that we tap, and of those 55, 10 are what we call gusher trees, where we fill a bottle every day, sometimes twice a day when when the sap's really flowing.
Right, right.
But most of ours we get a third to a half a.
Well, you're
a bottle a day.
you're in pretty high ground here.
We're about 800 feet elevation here, but our trees are spread out all over the place, and we're essentially on flat land, so we don't have the gravity flow that some of the bigger producers.
Well, I know some guys that tap that I know that I've talked to. They're in lower land areas, so they're close to water, and the trees close to water produce the most.
A couple of our gusher trees are just on the outer edge of the wetland.
Right.
So they're late to produce, but once the ice starts to melt, then those things produce well.
Right. Well, I'm gonna go look over at your bucket over
Oh
here.
yeah, okay. In fact,
I can see it's a high-tech system.
see there's a little bit of raw sap in there, and that was a little bit of that was yesterday, and then we've already gotten a little bit today. And here's the spile, and that spile is only in about ½ inch into the tree. You run the spile at an angle so that the sap drips out.
Yep. And what do those cost a piece?
I don't know. They came with the original equipment that my friend had.
Oh, okay.
These are cast iron or cast aluminum.
Yep.
And when you put in a tree, I don't know if you can see this or not, but here was a spile from last year.
Yep.
Here was from the year before. Whenever you put in a spile, you want to try to be at least 2 inches away from a previous one, because what'll happen for about a foot, 12 to 18 inches this direction and this direction, the wood will be brown.
Right.
It essentially kind of dies, but it doesn't kill the tree. There's been trees that have been tapped for 100 years. And they're still fine.
Now they're getting big money from the trees out like Vermont they're being harvested for lumber now that have spile marks, the tap marks from hundreds of years ago, and they're worth big money because they have a story.
Well, they have a story, and then it's a beautiful brown, not a dark brown, but kind of a light brown, and it really looks beautiful when you got that board trimmed out.
Right, yeah. They're making tables out of them.
Yeah.
It's almost like a spalted maple somewhat.
Yeah.
Because it's got colorized wood instead of just, the plain grain there. It kind of adds to it.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's got the character. So you try to tap your trees when they get to be about this size, right? When you're about 10, 12 inches?
10-inch diameter is about the minimum, the minimum size to tap. And then it used to be when you'd get like a 24-inch and above tap, you could put in 3, maybe even 4 spiles per tree. Right. Recently, it's been recommended, even with the big trees, you put in no more than 2.
One on each side?
Spiles, each year.
Right. Cool.
And again, when we're at our peak flow here, we've had a couple of times where we're getting 3 drips a second into the bottle.
That's fast.
Which is for around here is fast, yeah.
Right.
So 3 drips a second would fill this twice in a day.
Right. Nice.